is 15, has high-functioning autism, and vanished from Hendersonville, Tennessee back in February 2024.
Yeah, and by the time AtNight stepped in, that was September 2024. The case had been cold for, well, 6 months. I mean, think about it. Huge efforts initially, like 2,000 searchers, drones involved, FBI, TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, but they were hitting dead ends. Really, the only big news by August was the FBI putting up a $50,000 reward. That kind of showed how badly they needed new information.
Right. And that's when AtNight comes in, hired by Sebastian's father, Seth Rogers. And they didn't just join the search, did they? Their approach was different, aggressive maybe?
Definitely different. Right off the bat, September 4th, they made a splash. They partnered with Dwayne Dog the Bounty Hunter Chapman, for that instant media attention.
A big name recognition there.
Exactly. And crucially, they tackled the money aspect. They matched the FBI's $50,000, doubling the total reward fund. Now it's $100,000. So boom, big spotlight, big incentive right away.
But it wasn't just about headlines and cash, because this case, like so many others now, was drowning in online noise. You mentioned a misinformation crisis.
Oh, absolutely. They identified that immediately as a major hurdle. They couldn't just search. They had to protect the information flow first. So they publicly acknowledged getting death threats, which is intense. And they actually launched a counterintelligence probe into this online persona, SF Investigates.
A counterintelligence probe?
Yeah.
In a missing person case?
Yeah, to basically shield any real tips from being buried or discredited by all the online chaos and, frankly, sabotage. They saw the digital battleground as critical.
Okay, so that digital fight connects directly to what they did in October. And this part is really unexpected. They filed a civil lawsuit using the RICO Act. RICO, like for the mob. How does that apply here?
Well, it's super unconventional, but that was the point. It was strategic. By using a civil RICO claim, they were essentially trying to legally frame the coordinated online harassment and misinformation as an organized criminal effort, a criminal enterprise aimed at obstructing the investigation.
Wow. So going after the systemic disruption, not just individual comments.
Exactly. It was a legal power move to try and neutralize that whole front. And at the same time, they kept pushing publicly, demanding the FBI take the lead role, suggesting local efforts weren't cutting it.
So securing the information space, applying legal pressure, and then November. This is where the actual physical search takes a massive turn, right? Based on the intel they'd gathered and protected.
That's right. All that groundwork paid off. They got new leads that shifted everything. They essentially ditched the idea of him still being lost somewhere in the immediate Tennessee area, the grid search model that hadn't worked for months. The new intelligence pointed towards potential organized transport, maybe even trafficking.
Trafficking, that's a huge leap from a local disappearance. Where did that lead them?
It led them thousands of miles away. They identified specific zones, Oregon, and also New York, significantly near the Canadian border.
Oregon and New York. So how do they act on that? What does that look like on the ground?
They issued what they called a rapid reach notification, basically alerts sent out to towns, ports of entry along that U.S.-Canada border area, and the focus was specific: transient spots, motels, bus stations, places someone being moved might pass through. It signaled clearly they were now treating this as a manhunt, potentially involving abduction and transport, not a search for someone lost nearby.
Okay, so summing up those critical months, Q4 2024. AtNight, combined celebrity media, a huge financial reward, this really aggressive legal defense against online interference, and then pivoted the whole search based on new intel.
Yeah, it's a fascinating mix. High-profile tactics blended with serious intelligence work and legal fortification. They basically redefined the search parameters entirely, from a localized grid to a targeted international manhunt based on a very specific and grim hypothesis.
It really shows how complex these searches have become, especially with the digital element.
Absolutely. It suggests that maybe the old models aren't enough anymore, especially in high-profile cases that attract so much online activity, both helpful and harmful.
What feels like a really pivotal few months in the Sebastian Rogers case. Specifically, that winter period, November 2024 through January 2025, when AtNight PIA was really steering things. Okay, let's unpack this. This wasn't just, standard investigative work. It felt like a major strategic push combined with, fending off some serious attacks.
It really was a kind of dual mission. You hit it right there. On one hand, they had to take this search from just local to potentially international based on their own intelligence.
Mm.
Very different. And at the exact same time, they were basically under siege, dealing with intense harassment, threats, trying to protect the investigation itself. Shows real resilience.
Let's talk about that geographic shift first, because it seems fundamental. They moved way beyond Tennessee, didn't they?
Oh, completely. What's fascinating is how their independent intel led them. It wasn't just expanding the radius. They pinpointed what they called active investigation zones, hundreds, maybe thousands of miles away. We're talking Oregon and parts of New York State, right near the Canadian border.
Oregon and New York. Wow, so that implies a very specific theory.
Exactly. It strongly suggested they were working on a hypothesis involving potential cross-border movement. Human trafficking was definitely on the table.
And how did they act on that? Operationally, I mean.
Well, they issued these wide-reaching alerts, targeted every single U.S. town, and critically, all ports of entry along the entire U.S.-Canada border.
Not just general alerts, though, right?
No, very specific. They asked law enforcement and others to keep an eye on transient facilities. Think motels, bus stations, places people might move through quickly without leaving much trace.
And that strategic direction got some public backup, too, I recall.
Yeah, it did. People like Dog the Bounty Hunter mentioned it on shows like Vinnie Politan Investigates. That helped keep the pressure on, kept the case visible beyond just Tennessee.
Okay, so the search goes international, or at least binational. But parallel to that, there was this huge financial element.
Absolutely essential. You can't run that kind of expanded operation without resources. The financial campaign was relentless.
Relentless is right. The reward fund increases were pretty rapid.
They were clearly designed to generate leads, keep the story in the news, make it worthwhile for someone, anyone, with information to come forward.
Let's look at the numbers. It jumped by $50,000 on November 4th, right? That brought it to $175,000.
Correct. And then just over a month later, by December 12th, they hit a major milestone.
The $250,000. $250,000.
$250,000. That's a serious amount of money. It signals intent. It signals desperation, maybe, but also determination.
Okay, here's where it gets, well, darker. As the reward went up, as the investigation seemed to gain ground internationally, the hostility intensified.
It really did. And we're not just talking about online arguments or trolls. This escalated.
Tell us about that. What kind of threats are we talking?
We saw evidence of coordinated online harassment campaigns targeting specific team members. Then came direct death threats. There were even reports, pretty credible ones, of a supposed $100,000 bounty being placed on the investigative team to silence them.
A bounty? That's terrifying. That's direct sabotage territory.
Absolutely, and that forced their hand. They couldn't just ignore that.
So they took legal action.
Yes, in late 2024, they filed for what's called emergency legal relief, basically seeking immediate court protection for their people. This wasn't about lawsuits down the road. It was about stopping immediate harm and preventing the investigation from being derailed by intimidation, protecting the integrity of the whole effort.
And then it spilled right out into the open, didn't it? The most public example.
Yeah, January 19th, 2025.
Right.
A very explicit, very public death threat posted on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Something like, I will shoot you in the face. Just laid out there.
Exactly that. Unmistakable. But AtNight's response was quite calculated. They didn't back down. Instead, they publicized the threat. It was an act of defiance, really, signaling they wouldn't be intimidated, wouldn't be scared off the case.
So putting this all together, what this deep dive really highlights is an agency juggling two incredibly difficult things at once. They're managing this complex, potentially global intelligence operation, while also fighting off this really vicious, targeted opposition trying to shut them down.
It really raises a crucial question for investigations today, especially high-profile ones. In this era of, constant online noise and information warfare, how vital is that counterintelligence piece? AtNight, actively monitoring hostile online groups. You mentioned SF Investigates earlier, trying to sift real intel from deliberate disruption. It's a whole new layer of investigative work.
That's a really key point, protecting the mission itself from bad actors.
And what's key here, looking at the material, is this wasn't things slowing down. Not at all.
No, quite the opposite, it seems.
It was a major, really aggressive push, an escalation designed to, force the issue.
Force the issue and maybe grab headlines again.
Absolutely. Grab attention, compel action. It looks like a two-pronged strategy, really.
Okay. What were the two prongs?
Well, first, massive financial pressure. And second, a big operational move across the border.
All right, let's unpack the money side first. That reward fund, it saw a big jump, didn't it?
It did. February 24th, 2025. Right around that tough 1-year mark.
How much was the increase?
They added $97,000, which is a lot.
$97,000. Wow.
Yeah.
Bringing the total to what?
Took it up to $347,000. And remember, they partnered with Dwayne Chapman, Dog the Bounty Hunter, on this.
So nearly $100,000 added right on the anniversary.
Yeah.
Why that timing? Why such a big lump sum then?
Well, think about it. It's a statement, a strategic declaration almost.
A declaration, meaning
Meaning it's designed to cut through the noise, to say, look, this reward is real, it's huge, and we're serious. It's meant to push someone with information over the edge, you know?
make the risk worth it.
Exactly. And grab that national media spotlight again. Show this deep-pocketed commitment.
Okay, so nearly $350,000.
But they didn't stop there.
No, they didn't. Just about a month later, March 29th.
Another increase.
Yep. And even bigger this time. Another $100,000.
Wow. So that pushed the total to?
$447,000.
Yeah.
Almost $500,000 sitting there.
That's applying some serious financial heat.
That's maximum pressure. It shows, one, they have the resources, and two, they're willing to keep applying that pressure, no backing down. One of the biggest private rewards out there for a missing person, I'd imagine.
Definitely up there. Sends a very clear signal.
Okay, so while all this financial pressure is building domestically, something else is happening operationally, right? Something international.
That's right. This is where it gets really interesting. They broadened the scope way beyond Tennessee.
You're talking about the BLO, the Be on the Lookout?
Exactly. Issued March 10th, 2025. It was a precautionary alert.
Precautionary, so no specific sighting.
Correct. They were very clear on that, but it connects to this really grim possibility, the international trafficking hypothesis.
The idea that he might have been moved out of the country by, like, organized networks?
Precisely. It's a scenario they had to consider based on general intelligence about how missing persons cases can sometimes develop, especially involving trafficking networks. So strictly precautionary, but proactive.
Covering their bases for a worst-case scenario.
You got it.
And the reach of this alert, it wasn't just vague. It was specific states, right?
Very specific. 4 U.S. states along the border. California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas.
Okay. And then into Mexico.
Yeah. 6 Mexican states specifically chosen. Baja California, Sonora, Chihuahua, Coahuila, Nuevo León, and Tamaulipas.
Why those 10 specifically? That seems very targeted.
Oh, it's absolutely targeted. That's intelligence-led work.
How so?
Those states, both sides of the border, they represent known transit corridors, routes used by these networks.
Oh, okay. So focusing the alert there maximizes the chance someone might actually see something.
Exactly. You alert the officials, the law enforcement, the border agents in those specific high-traffic zones and ports of entry. It's efficient. It's smart. Shows a sophisticated approach.
So putting these two pieces together, then, the near $500,000 reward, this huge financial lever,
Yeah.
and then this incredibly specific, geographically targeted international alert.
Right.
What does that tell us about AtNight's strategy during those 2 months, February, March 2025?
Well, I think you called it a strategy of overwhelming force earlier.
Right.
And that feels right.
Yeah, it feels like they were just hitting it hard from every angle.
Completely. They weren't winding down after a year. They were actually dramatically escalating, using both financial muscle and proactive, intelligence-based operations.
Setting a new kind of standard, maybe?
Could be. It certainly showed an unwavering resolve. No slowdown, just more pressure.
So the final thought then, for you listening.
Yeah, something to really think about.
When you see a private agency, a non-governmental group, deploy this kind of resource,
Almost $500,000 international intelligence coordination.
how does that change the game? What does it mean for expectations around resources in these long, complex missing persons cases going forward?
It's a big question, isn't it? Something to really mull over. How does that private capability shift the landscape?
But shifting gears quite a bit.
Right.
We're moving away from, the massive search efforts we often hear about.
Yeah.
April and May 2025. Well, they weren't really about boots on the ground.
No, not primarily. It was about transforming sort of an emergency response into something sustainable.
Into a functioning, resilient organization, yeah.
Exactly. So our mission today really is to understand that transition. How does a private investigation go from that initial high-energy mobilization to building a legally defensible long-term operation? These 2 months, April and May, were defined by really specific targeted actions.
Okay, so structure and intelligence.
Professionalizing, yeah. Intelligence analysis, structural reinforcement, that's the core.
All right, let's start with the intelligence piece in April then. On April 6th, 2025, AtNight gets this anonymous tip, the treehouse tip.
A potentially big one.
Yeah, it was the photograph, showed a kind of makeshift hideout, like a tent structure, with some domestic stuff inside a blanket, boxed water.
And what's key here is the immediate reaction. It was professional, very quick.
Okay.
Because the photo, it was completely stripped of metadata. You know, no GPS, no timestamps, nothing useful like that.
So they couldn't just, like, look up where it was taken.
Exactly. They had to rely purely on forensic analysis of the picture itself. What could they see?
Right.
And they didn't just sit on it. They immediately packaged that analysis into a formal report, sent it straight to the Sumner County Sheriff's Office, the SCSO, and importantly to the FBI's Rescue Me Unit, their missing persons component.
Okay, so proper channels, formal report, shows they're taking it seriously professionally.
Absolutely. Positive, documented action. Very meticulous.
Then, just 2 days later, April 8th, there's a shift. They go public, sort of. Crowdsourcing.
Yeah, a different tactic.
They put out this appeal asking for help identifying a logo. Just a logo on a paper bag, visible in, well, maybe related evidence, maybe not specified here. And Sebastian's father, Seth Rogers, he makes this public plea. Very visible.
Right.
Said something like, identifying this logo could be the key.
Right. Leveraging public eyes for a specific small detail. It seems routine, but it generated a lot of input.
Which I imagine brings its own set of problems, right? All that public input needs managing.
And protecting.
Precisely. You go from focused intelligence analysis to this wide public appeal, and suddenly the risk profile changes. Legal risks, especially.
Okay, so that leads into the structural side.
Directly. It leads to probably the most significant structural move they made. Releasing that revised reward disclaimer. That was April 18th.
And the reward fund was pretty substantial by then.
Oh, yeah, $447,000. So protecting that fund and the process around it became critical.
So this new disclaimer, what did it do? What were the key changes?
It was all about building legal fortifications, protecting against fraud, against liability claims, maybe even jurisdictional issues between states.
Okay.
The absolute crucial change, the big one, was this new rule. For a tip to be eligible for any reward money, it had to be reported to law enforcement first, period. Yeah. And the person submitting the tip needed to provide actual proof they'd done that.
Wow. Okay. So law enforcement first, then AtNight for the reward.
Yes. And it didn't stop there. They added really rigorous verification for claimants.
Like what?
We're talking international database screening using biometrics.
Seriously? Biometrics?
Yes. And maybe the biggest hurdle? Signing a sworn affidavit attesting under penalty of perjury that the information was obtained lawfully and reported accurately.
So basically treating the tip submission almost like court testimony from the get-go.
Exactly. It professionalizes the incentive, turns the reward from just cash into a highly structured, defensible investigative tool, ready for potential litigation down the line.
But I gotta ask, making people go to law enforcement first, doesn't that potentially slow things down? Couldn't a good tip get lost in bureaucracy before AtNight even sees it?
That's a fair question, and it highlights a strategic choice they made.
Okay.
They prioritized legal defensibility and a clean evidence chain over perhaps immediate speed on every single lead. It forces the whole process to be legally sound from step one.
So April was about receiving intel, like the treehouse tip, but also heavily about building these legal walls with the disclaimer.
Setting the stage.
Then May comes around. Things seem quieter publicly?
Much quieter publicly. But internally, it was about sustained effort. The focus really shifted to continuous analysis, vetting all the tips that came in because of that April push and the reward.
So digging through everything, the disclaimer process was now funneling to them.
Right. And this is where you see the sheer scale of their commitment. May was defined by deep dive digital forensics, OSINT open source intelligence work. It meant analysts painstakingly reviewing, validating, cross-referencing every single piece of information, separating the signal from the immense noise.
That sounds incredibly resource-intensive.
It was, massively. Just to give you a sense of it, it was confirmed later that AtNight teams, over the entire investigation, put in over 500,000 analyst hours, 500,000 hours.
Wow.
Mostly on digital forensics and OSINT. May was really the heart of that intensive vetting period.
Okay, so looking back at April and May 25, it's really a picture of evolution, isn't it?
Definitely.
Moving from that initial, almost frantic search phase to building a professional, resilient, legally buttoned-up private intelligence operation.
Yeah.
Making sure it could last.
Absolutely. It ensures the private effort is credible, defensible, and can operate effectively alongside official channels for the long haul.
The summer of 2025.
That's right.
We're looking specifically at how the private investigation firm AtNight PIA really shifted gears. They went from, searching to actively confronting institutions.
A definite shift in strategy.
And the catalyst, the thing that really forced this change around June 2025,
Yeah.
it seems to boil down to one single piece of intel. A cryptocurrency ransom demand.
Yeah, that was the pivot point.
This wasn't just another lead.
Yeah.
It immediately raised the stakes, jurisdictionally speaking.
Absolutely. The sources show that time frame June into July 2025 was a real transition. AtNight's aim was clear. Use this very specific actionable intel to, basically force federal intervention, get it above the local level.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of that tip. It came in around June 23rd.
Correct, June 23rd. And this wasn't vague at all. It had some real technical details.
Like the currency demanded?
Exactly. It wasn't cash. The demand was for $30,000 in USDT.
USDT. That's Tether, right? A stable coin.
Spot on. It's crypto, but pegged to the US dollar. So you get the speed of digital assets, but, stability. It immediately signals a need for cyber expertise.
And crucially, they had the wallet address.
Yes, the tip included the linked digital wallet address.
Yeah.
Traceable, at least potentially.
Wow. Okay, so the how was the crypto, the wallet, but it also gave a where, didn't it? Mentioned Cancun, Mexico.
It did. Suggested international trafficking to Cancun, and it even promised proof of life through a supposed witness working at a hotel there.
So a crypto ransom and an international element. What did AtNight do immediately?
Well, recognizing this was high threat, time sensitive, they acted fast, sent the intel straight to basically everyone relevant.
Like who?
The FBI, the TBI, NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and of course the local Sumner County Sheriff's Office, all within about 48 hours, June 23rd to 25th.
But reading the sources, it sounds like AtNight felt, like the agencies weren't moving fast enough on this. Is that fair?
The indication from the sources is that AtNight perceived a delay. Whether it was actual delay or just not the federal response they expected immediately, hard to say definitively, but they interpreted any hesitation as a failure to grasp the transnational crime aspect.
And that perception led them to change tactics again.
It did. When they sensed that perceived lag, they pivoted straight to public confrontation. Very strategic.
Okay, so how did they make that pivot from investigator to, I guess, public advocate demanding action?
Right. So on July 1st, 2025, AtNight and its parent org, One World, they didn't just ask. They issued a formal public demand.
A public demand for what?
For immediate and comprehensive federal intervention. And they didn't just say help. They made a legal argument.
A legal argument? How so?
They specifically cited the circumstances, the cross-border element, the ransom, arguing it clearly fell under federal kidnapping laws, specifically 18 U.S.C. Section 1201.
The Federal Kidnapping Act. So they were basically saying, this is your jurisdiction, FBI.
Precisely. That statute is the legal mechanism that compels FBI involvement in cases like this. They were trying to force that trigger.
And this wasn't happening in a vacuum. They timed this with other things, right?
Yeah.
Like the reward money.
Exactly. Right around then, the total reward pool, boosted by that partnership with Wayne Dog Chapman, hit its max, $500,000.
$500,000. That adds serious pressure alongside the legal demand.
No question. And then just a few days later, July 5th, they doubled down on the international angle.
Now,
They formally alerted the U.S. Department of State and the relevant U.S. embassies, pointed to the growing number of tips suggesting Sebastian might be in Mexico, likely stemming from that initial ransom lead.
okay, so zooming out, connecting the dots here, this whole period, June July 2025.
Because the threat wasn't just external, was it? It was becoming internal.
Precisely. Sometimes the biggest hurdle is the noise, the disinformation coming from within the community following the case.
Okay, so let's unpack August 1st. This is when things got pretty public. AtNight described facing a misinformation crisis. What did that actually involve on the ground?
Yeah, crisis is a strong word.
Yeah.
But think about it protecting resources. Bad leads, someone impersonating officials
Yeah.
that wastes valuable volunteer time, maybe even jeopardizes real leads.
Yeah.
So August 21st, that's the date, AtNight goes public.
The request for information about SF Investigates. Stephen J. Fisher.
Exactly. They issued a formal public request targeting that specific handle.
And this wasn't just naming names, was it? They asked for specific evidence.
That's the key part. They wanted verifiable records, direct messages, emails, even call logs. They were trying to show publicly that this wasn't just online chatter. They saw it as a direct threat to their intelligence gathering.
Which is fascinating. A private agency using public pressure like that, trying to get digital comms to prove, essentially, systemic disruption, to protect their own channel.
The goal was to neutralize that disruption. They felt these deceptive contacts were like polluting their data stream. It was a bold move, trying to compel private communications into the open, basically building an internal firewall.
But wasn't there a risk? Making this internal fight so visible? Couldn't that just add to the chaos?
Oh, sure. There was definitely a PR calculation there. But they must have decided the operational need, cleaning house, protecting the volunteers' efforts, outweigh that risk. Sometimes you have to take an aggressive public stance to secure the core mission.
Okay, so that's August, securing the inside. Then comes September. And the challenge shifts, right? Now it's about showing they can last, especially when the official investigation seemed, well, stalled.
Yeah, September 4th was a big marker. 1 year since AtNight officially joined the case. And this is 18 months into the whole thing with, frankly, no major official breakthroughs announced. You could feel the inertia setting in.
Then we get that FBI update around mid-September.
Right, so we're between the 9th and 13th. The FBI put out a public statement. They renewed calls for tips, but the headline was pretty stark. No solid leads after sifting through hundreds of tips.
So official stagnation confirmed, but the FBI update did do some narrative cleanup, didn't it?
It did. That was actually pretty significant. They specifically debunked some really persistent online theories. Remember the flashlight theory?
Yeah.
And the green hood? Yeah, it was about securing the investigation itself, protecting it from internal misinformation first, and then demonstrating the stamina needed for these incredibly complex, high-scrutiny modern cases. They knew the case's longevity was under attack just by the nature of the information environment we live in now.
It really makes you think. Yeah, and the timing here is, well, it's really important. We're 18 months in, right? And just last month, September 2025, we got that FBI update, basically confirming the official investigation had kind of hit a wall. Stagnation was the word they used.
Right. No solid leads. And they didn't just say that. They used it to sort of clear the air, too, didn't they?
Exactly. They specifically debunked those big online rumors, the flashlight theory thing.
Yeah, the distant sighting.
And that unverified green hoodie report basically saying, look, those aren't going anywhere.
So while the official side seemed to be slowing down,
That's the contrast you really need to see. How did this private intelligence operation keep the momentum going? Not just keep it going, but actually, escalate.
backed by a huge amount of private money.
Huge. $500,000 in the private fund. That's, 10 times the official reward? It just shows this incredible commitment, going way beyond the usual timeline.
That kind of money suggests they really believe in their approach. So, okay, let's unpack that first year. What was this private campaign actually doing?
Well, it wasn't guesswork. It was all driven by intelligence analysis right from the start.
Okay.
And that analysis led them pretty quickly to expand way beyond Tennessee. They were looking at leads pointing towards Oregon and upstate New York.
Wow, that far.
Yeah, way up near the Canadian border. The working theory behind that geographical jump was human trafficking. The data suggested they needed to look thousands of miles away immediately.
And while they're chasing leads across the country, they also needed to handle all the tips coming in, especially with that big reward. That's where the disclaimer came in. Summer of 25?
Exactly right. The legally binding reward disclaimer. That was vital, really, for the integrity of the whole thing.
How so?
It set up strict rules, verification protocols. It meant Anyone with a tip, especially if they hoped for that $500,000 reward, had to report it to law enforcement first.
Okay, so filtering the noise.
Precisely, making sure they only dealt with, properly vetted, actionable intelligence. It protected the investigation's credibility.
And just think about the sheer scale of effort here, Over that year, this private team put in over 500,000 analyst hours.
500,000 hours, just on the digital side. Cyber intelligence, data modeling, all of it.
Which is incredible.
And it's all that digital work exhausting those cyber leads. That brings us right to this moment. The core insight, launching this autumn offensive in early October 2025.
The autumn offensive. It sounds, aggressive, like a deliberate shift.
It is. It's the critical transition.
Yeah.
They're moving from that phase dominated by digital forensics and cyber intel to physical, boots-on-the-ground searching and verification.
Okay, so not just general searching, though.
No. It's highly targeted based on everything learned over the last year. They're deploying specialized teams to multiple states, and they're looking for something specific. Artifacts of a crime.
Artifacts of a crime. What does that actually mean on the ground?
It means they've moved past hoping for just a sighting of Sebastian. They are hunting for hard, physical proof, things left behind.
Like operational sites, forensic traces.
Exactly. Anything that could prove a sophisticated abduction actually took place. Evidence of the crime itself.
So this big pivot, this aggressive physical search, what's the takeaway? What does it signal for the case now?
It signals that this private investigation is making sure the search for Sebastian, who's 16 now, remember, doesn't just fade away. It remains active, urgent, unrelenting, really.
And the combined reward is significant now.
Yeah, you add the official amount, it's $550,000 total on the table.
And if you listening have any information, the number to call or text is Dog the Bounty Hunter's official tip line, 844-922-3236. Or email mostwanted@manhunts.one. We've got a really interesting set of documents in front of us. Redacted files from a private intelligence investigation into Sebastian Rogers' disappearance. We're really going to explore this gap, you could say, between the public story and what was happening on the private intelligence side.
Exactly. And our goal here is, it's to piece together what these specific files show. What were the investigators actually seeing? Who did they flag as, a serious concern? And just how far did they go diplomatically, legally, when the official leads seemed to dry up? It's kind of a shortcut to the intel the public never really saw.
Okay, let's start unpacking that. The Texas Roadhouse situation seems like the place to begin. Publicly, the story settled by September 2025. Right?
Yeah.
FBI clears the person in the green hoodie. Says they're a regular customer.
Right, that was the public narrative. But these internal documents, they throw a wrench in that. There's a transcript we have from 2024, a call with someone at the restaurant. And when asked about that specific individual, the quote is, "I do not know who that is," plainly stated. That really cuts against the whole known customer idea.
So a direct contradiction there. And the private team, they didn't just stop at the ID issue, did they? They looked hard at the behavior itself. The memos mentioned things like loitering near the car before the family got out, walking straight to the women's restroom.
Exactly. And making no purchase, then leaving quickly on what they noted was a busy Sunday night. That pattern felt off.
So why push back against an official FBI clearance based on that pattern? That seems risky.
Well, because for their analysts, that behavior wasn't just odd, it triggered specific warnings. There's a confidential behavioral analysis report, November 2024. It flags that individual, calls them POIA, person of interest A, and says their actions met the threshold for their internal iAlert system for malintent.
Okay, the iAlert system. What does that actually measure? What's the function?
It's essentially a system for flagging behavior based on clear, sustained interest that isn't related to any normal transaction or interaction. In this case, the weird pattern loitering, restroom, no purchase, combined with what the report calls an extended gaze aimed right at Sebastian.
An extended gaze. Okay,
Yeah.
so not just incidental contact.
Precisely. And the primary hypothesis from the analysts driven by this iAlert flag was, frankly, chilling. They thought POIA could be part of a plot connected to Sebastian's disappearance later that evening.
Wow. Okay, so they have this very specific, very serious hypothesis about a local threat. But then the investigation, it goes global. What prompted that massive shift?
Yeah, the focus shifted pretty dramatically towards international channels. Fast forward to August 2025. The team actually filed an urgent request with the United Nations. This was based on a potential sighting in Tel Aviv, Israel.
Tel Aviv, that's a huge leap, logistically and jurisdictionally. What was this sighting, this facial ping you mentioned? What made it credible enough for a UN filing?
It came from an AI-assisted observation. It flagged a young male being escorted into an Israeli police vehicle. The details noted were slender build, light hair, dark rectangular glasses.
Okay, but descriptions can be vague. Was there more?
Yes, the key was the forensic analysis. The system compared facial proportions specifically, things like the eye-to-nose ratio and the nose-to-chin ratio, and those metrics, according to the analysts, appeared consistent with Sebastian's known reference photos.
How solid is that kind of AI comparison in, a legal sense? Can you act on that?
Apparently solid enough for them to take the next big step. That Tel Aviv observation, that facial ping, became the explicit basis for filing a formal application under the Hague Convention. And for you listening, the Hague Convention on International Child Abduction is the treaty, the mechanism, designed for getting abducted children returned across borders immediately.
So they weren't just observing, they were actively using international legal tools. And this proactive approach, it mirrors what they were doing domestically too, right? Even earlier.
Absolutely. Back in late 2024, they were already pushing for more federal muscle. They needed the TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, to sign off on a specific form, USM 641.
And that form does what exactly?
That's the key administrative step you need to formally bring in the U.S. Marshal Service, get their resources involved. And alongside that, by December 2024, they were sending those detailed behavioral reports, the ones identifying POIA directly to the FBI and to NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children.
Okay.
So yeah, these documents really show a pattern, a refusal to just accept silence or the status quo. They were constantly trying to generate leads, push buttons, get every possible resource engaged.
Which stands in pretty stark contrast to the sort of case closed or person cleared narrative that was sometimes presented publicly.
Every stark contrast, yes.